welcome to another episode of my weird little podcast where we talk about everything and anything that is weird. So that means cryptids, aliens, weird stuff, murders, mysteries, true crime, the Bermuda Triangle, the
Nice.
Michigan, Lake Michigan Triangle. We should talk about that again
Right.
if I
There's,
didn't already talk about that.
we could just make a podcast, triangle podcast.
Triangle podcast. There's a triangle in LA. The Sunset. It was like the Sunset Triangle or something like that.
Damn it,
But
what
yeah,
they call it. That's true. Yeah, there's
Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills.
Beverly Hills Triangle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Beverly
Yeah.
Hills has everything.
I don't want to make a podcast just on triangles.
After 4 episodes, we're like, damn, maybe there isn't that much.
Yeah. But yes, this is my podcast. This is Tia. There's Pat. And Pat is going to surprise me with a story today because he didn't, I thought he was going to talk about something else. And he said he didn't find anything or enough for a podcast, so he changed it. So it's a surprise. So I'm hoping it's weird, at least, so it fits in with the theme. And yeah. So take it away.
Oh, I was joking. I'm like, oh, you.
Oh, I'm talking about normal stuff.
Here's 11 things you'll find in your office. But yes, hello, welcome everybody. Thank you for having me on, Tia. Always a pleasure. But yeah, it happens sometimes. You find like something really cool, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna jump right into it, and then you're like, oh, that was it. Like,
yeah,
the article I read that had that small snippet in it. That's all that's known.
Yeah, or you'll watch like a really great TikTok, but then you realize they said everything in the TikTok.
Right, yeah.
Like, oh, you can only talk about it for 3 minutes maximum.
Right, yeah. Or even worse, you're going down like a conspiracy theory rabbit hole, and then you figure it out. You're like, oh, this isn't a mystery. Dang it.
Yeah. Remember that time I did a whole episode on the Beverly Hills nightclub
That's
and
right.
then realized
Thinking
that it
was
wasn't
in LA.
LA at all. However, I still went forward with it because I had committed.
It was a good episode. It was still a good, interesting story.
It was still good. It was still good story.
Just no Hollywood connection.
There is no Hollywood connection. But if you are like, or if you listen to or enjoy, well, I don't want to say enjoy because no one likes hearing about tragedy, but if you are interested in stories about tragedy, the fire at the Beverly Hills Hotel, which I believe was in Ohio.
Some like that, yeah.
Some other place that's not Beverly Hills, California. It is fascinating and tragic and terrifying. But yeah, I did a whole episode on that on Hollywood Haunted, and it has nothing to do with Hollywood. So, but yeah, anyways, what are you talking about today?
Today, I mean, we're kind of going back towards the haunted, because we're talking about death. But this is something I've always wondered, like there's so many different ways to die, I'm sure people have seen 1,000 Ways to Die or whatever that's called on Spike TV. or whatever it's called now that Spike TV is gone. But yeah, just kind of going over weird stuff about death, and then my like top weirdest deaths, I guess.
Okay.
So death has there's 5 classifications that death has: natural, accidental, suicidal, homicidal, undetermined, and pending. And I guess, a lot of the mystery would go into undetermined and pending, but also the other ways that people die. There's also just some weird ways people die. So I went into both sides. Apparently, only medical examiners and coroners may use all of the manners of death. Other certifiers must just use natural or refer to the death as whatever the medical examiner says. Mm-hmm. So it's really only up to like 2 people to actually determine that. Apparently, the deadliest month is January, an average of 250,000 people die every year in January, just in the U.S.
Mm.
Um, yeah, which
I
I thought,
feel like that's like right after the holidays and New Year's resolutions
oh
and
God, Jesus.
financial. Well, because
No,
like
no, I get
you have to like reevaluate your whole life, and be like, oh, it's another year going on, and if it's another year of the same,
right, yeah.
that can be really disappointing to some people.
That's true, yeah. So yeah, that's just some weird stuff. But this now I'm gonna get into like my top deaths. I actually got a lot of these from ancient origins because specifically I was more interested in like because death. I mean nowadays we have a lot of medicine and technology and stuff to assess death and find like the real issues going on behind it. But throughout history, they didn't have all that, so some
Hmm.
people died in unfortunate ways, and then weren't really, maybe not properly diagnosed, I guess,
Yeah.
beforehand. So yeah, I got this from ancientorigins.net. Of course, Wikipedia, of course, Google, and I started this rabbit hole off of a YouTube page. I don't remember which one it was, though, I'll be honest.
Mm.
But that's
We
kind of
should
where
just come up with like an anagram for Google, YouTube, and
Wikipedia. Yeah.
Wikipedia, because we use those for like everything.
GYW.
The
What's the fourth
the
one?
GooTubepedia.
Good. I got this off of Goodtubia.
Yeah.
Goodtubia. Yeah, we'll figure something out. So one of the first ones is Sir William Payne Galloway. So he was a British minister or a British member of the Parliament. And this is late 19th century. But like a lot of Brits back then, they like to go hunting throughout the year, with the fox and the hounds and all that.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, on one unfortunate hunting trip they went on, they were crossing over a turnip field to chase after this animal, and he fell and landed on a extremely large turnip and died instantly. And that was recorded throughout history. It's not the fact that he did anything else, but he died on a frickin' turnip. So yeah, Zeuxis, if you're not familiar, was a Greek painter, 5th century BC. And I've looked a lot into him because I was curious. And he actually did. He was one of the first ones in that time to go away from just colors and shapes and actually go into shading and stuff like that and showing shadows. But one painting in particular, because a lot of his paintings didn't make it. I think there's only two or three that actually still exist today. And one of them is a very famous painting because he apparently he had this like tryout for this painting because he wanted five beautiful women in it. The most
Hmm.
beautiful women he wanted in it. And he said he couldn't find one. So what he did was get a bunch of different women and he used different portions of their body for the painting. So all the women in the painting are actually different. There's several people in the painting that he's mimicking. So none of those women actually exist. He actually
Hmm.
created. So that was like one of his like big claims to fame or claim to fame. His other claim to fame is that during his last painting, he was doing a painting of Aphrodite, and allegedly an elderly woman had actually commissioned this painting for her own home, but she wanted to model it for herself, and she's an elderly woman, being Aphrodite. After the painting of this elderly woman, as Aphrodite was finished, Zeuxis observed his work and laughed so hard that he died.
Wow.
Yeah,
Feel like something else was going on there, but
that's hilarious. Well, like that's why I prefaced it with like we don't really, we didn't have modern medicine to be like, oh
yeah.
no, he died from asphyxiation or something, like he had something stuck in his throat or but like
Hmm.
that's written down in history along with his paintings. And the painting I was referring to earlier about the several different women is called Helen from The Girls of Croton, and that was
Wait, what's the title?
Helen from Among the Girls of Croton.
Okay. Cool.
And yeah, that was officially inducted, I guess, into the library in 1791. Um, that was, I mean, that's just a funny one because death by laughter. How could you not be interested?
Hmm.
My next one is Draco of Athens. And if you're not familiar, Draco was one of the first lawmakers of history. Before then, it was blood feuds and stuff like that. It was pretty barbaric. So people loved him because finally people were being, you know, tried for crimes and having an actual system where if somebody steals something, you know what I mean? It's not just he said, she said, and then someone else takes over. But so he was very loved by the citizens of uh, a I guess Athens, but they would be Aegean citizens at the time.
Hmm.
Um, but apparently, when he first started out, being um, like once he started creating the laws and it was accepted by society, he had this big speech that he did in a huge theater, and he did so great that they showered him with gifts. They were throwing roses and everything you could think of onto him, robes, all kinds of stuff, and he literally suffocated under all of these gifts and died in the theater.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but isn't that crazy to be suffocated by the gifts of your admirers? It's kind of
Yeah.
like it's like a paparazzi, quote or motto or something.
Yeah. That's pretty poetic.
Right, yeah, I thought that was interesting. Well, also just knowing because when I first looked up, I was like, oh, Draco of Athens died by gifts, and I was like, wait, who was this guy? Like, it's interesting to learn that he was just one of the first lawmakers, and it was accepted, not hated on. Aeschylus. That's Aeschylus, right? Aeschylus. Ooh, Aeschylus. That's probably right. It's a good cat name. Um, so apparently he was just he was just living in ancient Athens, and this was also 5th century BC. But he had a very big bald head, and he was hanging out on the beach one day, and it was so shiny and round that an eagle thought it was a rock. So the eagle dropped a large tortoise onto his head to shatter it, so he could eat the tortoise. But he
Yeah.
dropped it and it immediately killed him once the tortoise hit his head.
Oh, wow.
And the irony is that he had only gone outdoors that day because he feared his house would collapse and kill him.
I feel like there's more to that.
Well, this is 5th century BC, so we really
Yeah.
have very, very limited information. Like
Yeah.
he could have had some, his older mother or something was like, "Oh, I'm feeling the energy, and the house is gonna collapse if you don't go." Or like,
Yeah.
yeah, like he's been inside for too long, and she's like, "Ah, the house is gonna collapse if you don't go outside and get some air."
Yeah.
All right. Now we move on to Antiphanes, which I'm probably saying that one right. This was 4th century BC, and Antiphanes was a playwright back in the day. But this is just a shorter one. But she was just sitting writing a play, and according to an ancient Byzantine encyclopedia from the 10th century, which would be a few centuries later, she was actually killed by a fallen pear while she was writing a play.
Aw.
Right? Yeah. She's like, I figured out gravity. And,
Yeah.
all right, now we move to Agathocles. Maybe that's right. Of Syracuse. Now, Agathocles was an ancient king for in Italy, in Sicily, and he was considered a Greek tyrant of Syracuse. So a lot of Sicilians did not like the way he was ruling, and it's actually frequently mentioned in ancient texts how horrible he was and how barbaric some of his um, not torturing, but he would cut out the competition type of stuff. And so in 289 BC, which is I guess even earlier, he was actually murdered when he used a toothpick that someone of his they don't know this full story, but the toothpick was dipped in poison, and it
Mm.
was from one of his enemies, but nobody ever it's never known who actually did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, damn, that's a really clever one, especially for 289 BC.
Yeah.
All right, my next death, probably my favorite one, is Eleazar Avaran. Um, so Judas Maccabeus was a Jewish priest, obviously, in the 2nd century BC, and he led the Maccabean revolt against the Seleucid Empire.
Mm.
However, this is not about him. It's about his brother, Eleazar Avaran. Eleazar is serving in the service, or helping out with this revolt, and he actually was one of the front line people, and he heroically killed a King's War elephant. And the King's War elephants, those are huge. They're massive, and the reason they're used in wars is because they're huge and they can, rush through soldiers, touch, collapse gates and stuff like that. But so he stabs a spear into his stomach, into the elephant's stomach. And so it goes like right through him, directly in front of him. And the elephant dies instantly and then collapses on top of Eleazar. And he can't push the elephant off of him. So he dies suffocating underneath the elephant.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. But I thought that was like a crazy heroic death, And the craziest part is the reason that this is known is that the reason that a few of these are known is the artwork, which is kind of cool when you think about it, because that's like that's the only way of having history in a lot of areas, because these texts don't always last, and the paintings don't either, but at least the paintings are like a representation of what had happened, for when people either couldn't write or can't write. You don't even know how to write, much less have something to write on that's going to last throughout the years, So I'll put like a clip of this in there, but I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, wow.
Right? Yeah. So that's like what those elephants were. They had tons of people on top of them too.
Yeah.
'Cause,
For those who are listening, it looks kind of like a storybook depiction
right.
of a man being crushed by an elephant.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Once upon a time. Yeah, that one's probably my favorite, just because I don't know, it seems like super heroic. I don't know, it reminds me of like Lord of the Rings, maybe that's why it is.
Mm.
My next one, also a good one too. Marcus of Arethusa, which is actually a place. That was one I had to look up to. But he was sent by Constantine.
Where's Arethusa? You can't just say I looked it up.
Oh, I don't know anymore. It doesn't exist now. It's probably what is now Greece or something.
Oh, okay.
But it just sounded like a very cool place. That's why I had to, like, it sounded like it was made up for a second.
Oh, okay.
But he was sent to and this is another one that has artwork with it. I'll show you. I'll show you afterwards. But he was sent by the Constantine II after a mass conversion. So he was sent out to kind of convert more for the Christians, basically. But there was a lot of different sects at the time, sects, of religion. I mean, even of the same religion. There was a Aryan influence. There was, Nazi-Aegean is actually what it's originally called. And he apparently had a lot of ties to different places, ties to different religions. Also, this was back when religion controlled all of wars. So it's not like all these people were being completely honest. They were like, well, whoever wants the most power, and if that's whatever their religion is, that's going to be what they're going to convert you to. So if they take over if they take over Greece, they're going to convert it to Christians because that's whoever's running it. If you live under my roof, you're going to be a Christian. So he was sent out, and like I said, not completely orthodox, especially because all these people had similar religions, but they didn't work the same. Particularly confession. He was giving confessions, like you had. Basically, it was just a slightly different way of doing the confession. Like there wasn't anything really that big. It's not like he was taking your confessions and telling, the emperor or whatever, who was it at the time, of going and telling Constantine. It was just a different method. And I learned that going to Catholic school, that like all these other places have different methods of confession. Like some places you don't have to say a prayer afterwards to ask for forgiveness. Some of them you don't say anything and you're just supposed to do it mentally. But so there was a lot of things that they didn't agree with him. So in order to combat that, they decided to hang him in a honey-covered basket, and they had several wasps that were there to sting him to death.
Jeez. Was that Nicolas Cage movie where they put like the bees on his head?
Nicolas Cage movie.
Okay, never mind.
Right? Now I'm like, I don't know. I guess I need to see that.
You're not a Nicolas Cageopedia. Show me the picture.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Nicolas Cage, don't worry.
No. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It doesn't look very violent. It looks like he's kind of okay with it in the photo.
Well, it's interesting because apparently this was years later. Like he's like an old man at this time, and they believed because of his crimes, of the way he was doing. Also, like I said, religion was the war machine at the time. So who knows what he did to deserve this? It might be other things too on top of that. But he was considered a Christian martyr for this, which is like the whole martyrdom thing is so weird to me. If you die and you're a Christian, you're a martyr, whether or not you actually did something good. I don't know. But yeah, definitely an interesting one. And this one really does mainly exist through this etching. It's an etching that this is an original, and this has been around. This etching itself has been around for 219 years, which isn't that old when you think of where it's supposed to be depicting from. But that's the reason that this story really exists, is because this etching exists, and the Bible mentions Marcus, or the hanging and the bees of other martyrs. So they think that it's pretty well believed that this happened. Next one, Hans Steininger, or Steininger, maybe? I don't know. This one occurred a little bit later, and this was in the 16th century in, I guess what would now be Austria. Hans was the burgomaster, or the mayor, but burgomaster sounds way cooler, of a place called Braunau. There was a fire in the town, and his place started catching on fire. But unfortunately, while he was evacuating, he accidentally tripped on his own 4.5-foot long beard and broke his neck in the process.
Oh no.
Yep. Apparently, his beard was normally wrapped up in a leather pouch, but this day he decided to go without it.
Oh no.
And this is another one that they have a stained glass window of him, and this is in a church in Braunau still, and showing his beard.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's trippable.
Yeah, that beard literally goes past the glass.
Yeah.
I don't know how they did that. That's pretty cool.
They did a little beard extension there.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah. But yeah, I thought that one was cool, mostly because they actually have stained glass window of how large his beard was. That's pretty big. That's too much. Next up, Gouverneur Morris. If you're not familiar, and also was not, the Gouverneur Morris was the author of the preamble of the Constitution.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right?
Oh, I've totally heard this story before.
Yeah, probably.
I heard this, but you go ahead.
No, you're
I
good.
can't tell you what happens, but I totally remember looking up this guy. Oh no. Okay, go ahead. Yep,
So
I
he was
remember what happens.
so he was, yeah, like I said, author of the preamble. He was also a senator for the state of New York, and he was also one of the earliest slavery opponents. Unfortunately, he met a strange and unfortunate end. Morris had a painful blockage in his urinary tract. So this was something I also looked up, but he attempted to clear it using a whalebone. And apparently, whalebones were used for a lot when it came to stuff like that. I guess because of their sturdiness, you know. I also found out the whalebones that they used for fashion were actually not bones; that they were actually bellalium or bellum, or something is what they called it. But it's basically the cartilage inside of a whale that
Oh yeah.
but that allows it to bend and stuff like that. But using
Yeah,
whale
like for corsets.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
But using the whalebone, you can make it very sharp. You can make it thinner, I guess, than normal stuff. It's also been used as just a strong object to remove blockage in the esophagus, and was used as late as the 1800s. Um, so apparently, while trying to remove this blockage, he injured himself quite severely, and the cut from that injury developed an infection. And this was from the whalebone procedure, which is what it was actually called for a little while, was the whalebone procedure. And this
Which
led to
is
his
a nice way of putting it.
right, yeah, exactly,
Of
right.
what
Yeah.
he did with this whalebone.
I'm getting a whalebone procedure done. Yeah. This led to his death, unfortunately, in 1816.
Yeah.
But yeah, removing a urinary block with a whalebone, oh my God, with anything, like that's scary as hell.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
You just don't do these things yourself.
Right, yeah, right. And last one.
This is the guy who wrote the preamble of our Constitution.
Right, exactly,
Yes.
yeah, right. Like,
This is
just to reiterate that,
him.
yeah. That's hilarious. Next up, and my last one for now, because I might go down this rabbit hole again. And these are all just ancient weird deaths, There's what's it called now? With the award you can win for
Darwin Award.
the Darwin Award. So I mean that's
Yeah.
not weird. That's just dumb deaths, I guess, but
Yeah.
everybody's got their thing. But our next one up is John Cummings. John Cummings worked in the circus. He started out in a local circus, and he was a knife swallower.
Knife swallower.
Knife swallower, yes.
Yeah.
And then he slipped up on a banana and knocked himself to death. No, he was, he actually swallowed, on his very first attempt, he swallowed 4 knives. And this is not sword swallowing. He is swallowing and passing knives.
Oh.
Yeah.
Why?
Right? Because when I first read it, I was like, oh, okay. I was like, yeah. And then I was like, what do you mean he swallowed 4 knives? Like, what? He didn't bring them back, Like, but yeah, this is what he would do. So he apparently would do this, and on his next trip, he would pass the knives. So he noticed that this was like he could do this consistently, so this just became the act that he was just going to keep doing it and keep going higher. So he actually increased his tolerance to swallow 14 knives at once.
Jeez.
Which he somehow passed after the 14 days. Took a few days of passing with obvious abdominal pain and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So on his last show, of course, Cummings swallowed 20 knives and a knife case.
Jeez.
In one go. Cummings only passed the knife case a few days later and did not pass any of the 20 knives. So the thing he passed last went out first. So it's pretty obvious nothing else is coming out.
Yeah.
So after 4 years of abdominal pain, he finally died.
Oh, God.
They did an autopsy upon his death, and his stomach contained 1 full knife blade, a spring, and at least 40 different fragments of metal, horn, and wood.
Jeez.
And this one comes with a picture too. Pause for suspense. Right, I'll just zoom this one in a little bit. Whoops.
Oh, wow. Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was everything pulled out of his stomach. And the knife case. Why'd you have to do that? Like, I'm not saying that that's what did it,
well,
but I mean, also like,
I mean, obviously that wasn't it because that came out.
That's true, I guess. Yeah,
yeah.
He's like, I should have been swallowing knife cases. Damn it.
I don't think it was like one mistake. It was just a series of bad choices.
I mean, eventually that stuff's gonna not go through all those twists and turns in your body. Like, eventually that's gonna get stuck. It's like a clogged drain, Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that's my final one. I guess I'm glad I didn't end on the whalebone.
Yeah.
For anybody that needs to go use the restroom right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are just some ancient deaths that I thought were weird and mysterious. And yeah, I'm definitely going to jump into this rabbit hole again. Maybe not in the ancient side, but on the weird side again.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess I hope we learned something. Take care of your body.
Right.
Don't grow your beard out long.
Right. Shave. Definitely shave.
Shave. Don't put random things inside of you. And don't stand next to an elephant that you killed.
Right. Yeah. That you just killed. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you're going to kill it, move out of the way.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And so share, subscribe. You can listen to us wherever you find podcasts, and tell your friends about us and our weird little stories. If you have any other suggestions, you can email us at myweirdlittlepodcast@gmail.com or message me on the Insta or on TikTok, and however you want to contact me. And stay spooky, everyone.